Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Haley Rowe. I'm a marketing and sales coach and strategist for online health, life, and mindset coaches and service providers. And on this show, we talk about how you can establish yourself as a business owner and get clients, how you can create systems to save you time, how you can move through the blocks that are limiting you, whether that's mindset or tech obstacles. And today's guest is Marcy Rossi. She has your back when it comes to creating workflows and systems and getting things streamlined in your business. She actually has a background in law and corporate. She's known for her ability to cut through the noise, simplify decisions, and create smart workflows that make business feel whole and a lot lighter. She is the creator of The Shortcut, which is a 12-week done-for-you setup and coaching program that helps coaches go from overwhelmed to unstuck and confident and fully up and running. And she is not working behind the scenes when she's not working behind the scenes in somebody's business, she is usually hanging out with her dogs, watching Friends reruns, or saving recipes she will probably never make. I think we can all relate to that. There's so many saved things on my phone that I never end up touching. So thank you for being here, Marcy. Can you tell me a little bit about what made you want to shift from law and corporate to helping coaches with their workflows?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say it was completely unintentional. And I find that sometimes that's the best way to figure out what we really want is to understand what we don't want. So like you mentioned, I've done a lot of things. I was working in family law, specifically domestic violence law. I worked for a Big Four accounting firm. I was a supervisor at public libraries. And a lot of these positions used my skill sets, but something always felt like it was missing. And oddly enough, it was when I quit drinking that I discovered coaching was even a practice. I didn't really know coaching existed outside of kind of the athletic world. And so I actually decided to start my own business, and I was helping women change their relationship with alcohol. And when I was doing this felt like it finally clicked. Like I meant to be an entrepreneur. This was that missing piece. The skill sets in a lot of those positions were the same, but it was the freedom to do whatever it is that I wanted to do, to make my own decisions, to set things up my way. You might get that I'm a little bit of a control freak. That was what really lit me up. And so as I was developing this business and building this business from scratch, I actually got really excited about all the little pieces of building a business and figuring out email marketing and funnels and developing digital courses and all of these little pieces here. I'm still very passionate about alcohol-free living, but I would find myself like laying in bed at night thinking about a new funnel I could test, or, an A/B subject line that I could maybe play with. And so I was having a lot of fun. And it wasn't until I actually signed my first client that I started shifting into this, for lack of a better term, obsession with systems and processes, and just really, having a clear plan and a clear, respectable customer journey. Because when I made that first sale, I had no idea. So I would be having a conversation with a woman. This was like a four-figure sale. Like it was a good chunk of money. And then I had given her a deadline for an expiring bonus. And so I checked back in and she was like, "Oh, I actually purchased from you 2 days ago." And I was mortified. Like I'm a person that really takes customer service seriously. And I had designed this, a welcome sequence that was supposed to go out and all these little processes that I wanted to happen. And instead, I'm here asking her for money after she had already paid me. So that's when I started to get really, like I said, obsessed with making sure that these processes I'm using all these really boring words. But at the end of the day, what I'm designing is the customer journey. I wanted my customer journey to feel and represent exactly what it is that I wanted. I'm not a person that, asks for the sale after I already made it. I'm not a person that kind of puts my foot in my mouth. And so that is where I really decided that I wanted to kind of dive into designing the most optimized, process that I possibly could, the business that I possibly could, so that it reflected exactly what it is that I wanted it to.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of us have that moment where, we're new to the online business part, and there's so many different systems you don't even realize that you could be benefiting from. And then there's the glitches, and we can never fully expect everything to go perfectly. So when somebody is starting out, what kind of, you say one of your quotes is success isn't a mystery, it's a workflow. So tell me a little bit about how do you define a workflow, and what are some, things that beginner coaches should be thinking about as far as having them?
Yeah, I know a lot of these terms are confusing and sound repetitive and very unsexy terms like workflow and processes and systems. If I were going to boil it down and make it a little easier, I would say essentially at the heart of most of them, it's a checklist. It's having a repeatable process that you can do over and over again to kind of help catch some of those mistakes. Because, like you said, tech issues are going to fail. They've happened to me. I found out the other day that an old freebie that I had was no longer delivering, and I didn't know until someone had reached out saying that that email never went through. So tech glitches are going to happen, but what we can do is we can set ourselves up in the best possible way to prevent them from happening, to make sure that we've thought through them and that we have a plan when they do, right? Kind of that being prepared, making sure we've done everything that we can in our power, recognizing that not everything is within our control. So ultimately, when I'm thinking about, how do I people are successful, it is doing the same thing over and over again. And I'm sure you'll agree when you're talking about attracting clients, you're not going to fill your roster from the first 5 people you pitch. Like you're not going to get 100% success rate when you're talking about it. It is doing the thing over and over and over, right? It is building the reps. And sometimes you get stronger and your reps get a little bit better. You work on that messaging, and what you're actually saying to people lands a little bit better. And so maybe that rate goes up, but it is still at the end of the day something that we are doing over and over and over again. And when we have a checklist for that or some kind of process or procedure, we can make sure that we're fine tuning it, that we're making it a little bit better each time. And so that our success rate kind of goes up. So that's really what I'm saying at the end of the day is making sure that we have a process, looking at that process, and then tweaking it over time so that it is as strong and as smooth and as effective as we can, possibly make it be.
For sure. Yes. And it's one thing to, I noticed that in my business, there were things that I kept missing because I didn't set up a system for it, or I didn't have support with it. And so I realized if I want this to consistently happen, I can't just rely on, the days I have time for it, I'll do that. It had to become what you said, a checklist, a system, something that I could repeatedly do and or outsource. So what are some of the things that you think coaches need to have as a checklist or automation or something like that?
Great question. I mean, you can go crazy and make it for every single thing you do, but I think that's just a waste of your time. And it's usually, if that's where you start to dive in, it turns into a little bit of hiding, right? What are we not doing? How are we not having sales conversations when we're making a checklist for how to post an Instagram post, for example? So if it is something that is very simple, you do it every day, there's really no thought behind it, I think that's something that you can kind of push off to the end. The ones I like to start with are those really big, important pieces that we maybe don't do every single day. And so it's more likely that we're going to forget pieces. And if we think about it, we're also having to remember those steps, like thinking, I'll remember it later. That's just using up brain space. So when we take the time to actually document what it is that we're doing, we don't have to worry about trying to remember it next time. Next time we know it's going to go well. And again, we can kind of implement as we go along. So an example of this is, let's say you're going to do a webinar or a live training. There are a lot of pieces that go into that. It sounds a lot simpler, but you need to have it scheduled in your Zoom. You need to have a registration page for that. You need to have a thank you confirmation page. You need to have an email that goes out to confirm that they've registered 24 hours before. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, it keeps going with all the little details there. And so that we don't miss that step of, I forgot to send that reminder email or that replay email. That is something that is perfect for a checklist. It's not something that we necessarily do every single day, so it's unlikely to be second nature, but it's also not something so complicated that we would have really, an overwhelming time trying to do it. Just making sure that you note down what it is that you're doing can help you repeat it the next time. And there's simple ways you can do that. You can actually record yourself going through the process so that it doesn't have to be some crazy formalized document. Just making sure that we're making note of the task to make it that much easier either for ourselves or to outsource it at a future time, as you kind of mentioned before.
Yes, definitely. What are some of the tools that you like to use to create these systems?
There's a bunch of different things. Honestly, I usually will start kind of the quick and dirty way with just a Google Doc where I am taking screenshots of what it is that I'm doing. If you want to get really fancy, there are software tools out there that, again, will record your computer as you're doing things and turn those into an SOP. I've made a custom GPT where I can say, okay, these are the tools I'm using. Help me write kind of basically describe my process. Help me write an SOP, and then I can edit it because it is a million times easier to edit something than it is to write it from scratch. But you don't have to get complicated here. Whatever it is that you're going to use will work. If you're a pen and paper girl, then just write out the major steps that way. I like to have a Google Doc because it's always there for me. I like screenshots if it's something that I'm going to outsource to someone else, so I can make sure that it's very clear what is where and I don't have to find myself repeating myself or over explaining. But I don't know that this is an area where it's necessary to invest in a lot of tools. Like the scrappy thing can really work for you. It's more the matter of actually just sitting down and doing the thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed before they even start, or then they start and then they think, oh, I need a fancy tool, and they get sidetracked. So, how do you manage that overwhelm that comes with setting up different systems, figuring out what your process is, that kind of thing?
Yeah, choosing tools is really it's a challenge, especially for me, because I get obsessed and there's a lot of really cool things that are out there. But I also think that we have to be cognizant of everything that we're subscribing to. It's really easy to look at your bank balance at the end of the year and realize that you're throwing hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month on a bunch of little $10 a month tools or $12 a month tools. So first, I would want to make sure that there's some kind of return on investment in it. In something like documenting a process where you can just as easily either type it out in Google, ask GPT to, write out a first draft for you, take some screenshots, whatever it is. I don't know that there's a massive return on investment. But then when we get other tools like, our funnel building software where it's directly leading to our bottom line, or our email software, that's not something that we want to skimp on either. A tool that I've become obsessed with is Hotjar, right? Where it's recording what people are actually doing on your website. And not even that long ago, I actually saw someone had applied for working one-on-one with me. And I didn't get that notification because for some reason that particular application went in spam. And the only reason I knew to look to see if anybody had applied recently is because I check my Hotjar. So when we're looking at kind of all the tools of these shiny object syndrome, and maybe this is the thing that finally makes everything click, I would first look at whether there is an ROI on that particular investment, meaning return on investment. Is it going to directly impact our bottom line? And I think secondly, it's easy to kind of pick things in a silo, but for my clients, we have to take that step back. I have to understand what it is we're trying to build here, right? If all you want is one-on-one coaching, you just want to do one-on-one coaching, you don't want to sell digital courses, you don't want to do group programs, etc., you don't need something super fancy, maybe like a Go High Level or a Kajabi, right? These may be fun and people might be telling you that this is the perfect tool for you, but really understanding what your goals are, and then we can kind of narrow it down to make it a lot easier. I think part of it also is just understanding what's out there, even having conversations with other people in your space to say, hey, what are you using? What are you loving right now? Is a great way to discover what's there. But recognizing that there is no perfect tool, no perfect workflow, no perfect thing. It's just something that's going to meet you at your goals is really the most important thing there. But yeah, that's that big piece is what do I ultimately want to build here? And then am I choosing the pieces that are actually going to support that goal?
Right. Yes. And one of the things in the inner circle that my clients oftentimes talk about are their tools and what's working for them and what's helping them. And so I do agree with you that it's nice to have a community where you can
Yeah.
kind of bounce ideas off of, see what's working for other people. And I think the other thing is, you know, one thing I kind of want to ask you about, just because I think some people listening will relate, you pivoted from doing, alcohol coaching, helping people
Mhm.
free themselves from alcohol, to doing what you do now with systems and automations. And sometimes the people listening here will want to do that too. Like they'll want to
Sure.
pivot their message or their brand. And I'm curious, like, what were some of like, did you announce it or did you just kind of reinvent yourself? What kind of systems came into play when you were going through that transition?
Such a good question. So I want to first, well, I have a couple a couple of places I want to talk on there. So first, a lot of my clients come to me and they have a very clear picture of what it is that they want to build. And I would be really hard pressed to find an example of a client that has exactly the thing that they first came to me for. Like we all kind of grow and adapt as business owners, right? We evolve. And so it maybe not be such a dramatic shift of, alcohol free coaching to biz coaching. It could be, maybe I move from one-on-one to group coaching or I add in some new offers, etc. But allowing ourselves that pivot. It doesn't mean that we started off in the wrong direction. And it also doesn't mean that we have to get it perfectly right from the start because it will evolve. So giving ourselves some permission to grow there, I think is really key. For how I actually did it, it sometimes when we're pivoting, it comes from a place of trying to make it work, right? Like I didn't find the answer yet. This wasn't working for me, so that I need to change. Like I find that happens not all the time, but frequently enough with my clients where they try something one time, it doesn't work, and then they want to shift into something else. So recognizing again, going back to that building the reps, sometimes we have to try something more than once, especially if it's something that you're truly passionate about. So for me, I gave the time into alcohol-free coaching. It was working, not at a speed that I was happy with, and not at the speed, honestly, that my business is growing now. But when I knew that it wasn't the right shift was, again, I'm falling asleep at night, not thinking about how much better my life is without alcohol. Like I feel that, but that's not what I'm thinking about. What I'm thinking about is, what if I added an upsell to my next offer to see if this is going to be there? Or what if I played with, having an evergreen funnel so that when someone joins my email list, they're automatically getting emails for certain months instead of having to like every day try to figure out what I'm going to say. So for me, the thing I was excited about, the thing that kept me from sleeping, the thing that I wanted to dive in first was building the business. The second piece was people kept asking to hire me for business, right? I had friends and colleagues coming to me saying, hey, can I book time with you to talk about this? They weren't asking to book time with me to speak about alcohol. So part of it is listening to the market. If people are telling you this is what they want from you, they're recognizing a skill set, even if you don't recognize it in yourself. And then in terms of the transition, I let my email list know. That's where I was mainly growing my audience. I was doing some on social media, but soon after I switched, I actually kind of pulled off of social media, and I've never been happier. But I had to let people know, right? They didn't sign up to hear from me about business, and I wanted to give them an out, right? If you ask me for alcohol-free tips and all of a sudden I'm telling you about why you should sign up with MailerLite, like it's just not relevant anymore. So I let people know this is where I'm going to be shifting. And honestly, most of my email list stayed, which I thought was pretty interesting. Over time, you just see attrition. People will evolve and they've moved on from you. But I didn't see like this massive drop off, but I also knew that these weren't the hottest leads. They didn't come in for business. Maybe they like my stories, maybe they like my emails, but I wasn't necessarily a good fit. So letting the audience know that my topics are going to be shifting and then being proactive to build that new audience. I couldn't expect that people that had been listening about alcohol were going to start to listen about MailerLite, right? So having a way to basically start from scratch again. We're going to build a new funnel. We're going to have a new way to attract people onto our list and to nurture them. So it was a longer process. Like there was a transition period, but I also didn't overthink it. Like again, people were already asking for this. It was simply a matter of building the offers for what people were already wanting from me and what I was already honestly obsessed with. So I think it's perfectly okay to change. Just about everybody I know has done it in some form or fashion, and just making sure that we are building a process to build up whatever this new direction is that we're doing.
Yes, definitely. And I do agree. Like I used to work in business development and marketing and at startups. And then when I stopped doing that and wanted to start my own business, the things that people were naturally asking about, were wellness professionals, because that was a lot of the people in my network and the field. The companies I worked for were wellness and personal development and coaching certification companies. So naturally, that was just who was in my world. But then the questions they were asking were about the marketing, the parts they don't like when it comes to their coaching business. And so I was like, I'm just going to go where I'm wanted. Like,
Yeah.
And I started with just health coaches, and then the message evolved to more types of coaches, more types of service providers. Locally, I've worked with all different types of business owners. So giving yourself that permission to say, whatever you decide right now doesn't have to be set in stone. And yes, I'm sure it was work for you to transition and let everybody know. And you said it was a time period that you kind of gave it. But ultimately, if you would have waited and said, I'm not going to do alcohol coaching, I'm going to wait till I figure out the perfect niche, you would have never started anyways. And you probably wouldn't have, had that realization of what you wanted to do next. So sometimes we have to start and be willing to evolve, start before you're ready, let it evolve, and pivot when you need to and do what's aligned with you. So I love that was your story. What are, when we're in a new year right now, and I don't know when people are going to be listening to this podcast, but what is the system or checklist or automation that has you just the most excited right now?
Oh man, actually, I'm reading the Checklist Manifesto by I think it's Atul Chawande. He's a famous surgeon, and he's written a couple books. And so that's when I kind of realized this tie in, like, oh, what I'm building are checklists. That sounds so much better than SOPs or processes or systems. So that's where I was like, he's brilliant. I'm gonna use that checklist phrase. So I have them for just about everything, and I don't even realize how they've now become like integrated into my world. So I use ClickUp in my business for just about everything. And basically every day I don't have to think about what it is I'm going to do because I have the systems of building my visibility, because I have the systems of nurturing my audience, because I have X, Y, and Z. And they are little to-do lists, right? So when I have a new client sign up, it'll automatically populate all the tasks that are there. I send my clients a gift. I add them to their client portal. I give them certain trainings on how we're going to get started, etc. So what lights me up most, honestly, these days, especially in the beginning of the year, is not having to think about what I have to do today. I will log in and it's given me my tasks. On Mondays are days I do my outreach. They're days I pitch podcasts. I sign up for bundles and summits. I look for places where I might be able to do guest workshops, and it'll automatically populate a follow-up date for that and a second follow-up date, because no, silence is not a no, right? Like, I want to hear the no first. So I don't have to sit there and think about, how am I going to make sure that I'm building visibility? How am I going to make sure that I'm nurturing my audience? How am I going to make sure that X, Y, and Z? Because every admin, Friday days are admin expenses and that sort of thing. So all of these things are built for me. And it's really freeing to not have to sit down to your computer or sit down at your to-do list and say, where do I start? Like, everything is fleshed out for me. And this isn't something that just happens overnight. You're not going to make a checklist of every single thing that you do off the bat. And again, it's going to grow. We have to start somewhere, just like you were talking about finding that perfect niche. Like, we have to start somewhere, try it, see maybe what's not working, and then make some adjustments. So that has been really the biggest thing for me, I think, these days. It's easy to start the beginning of the year and overwhelm of, how am I going to accomplish all of these goals? But I don't have to think about that. I know that my big goals are related to visibility, growing my audience, and ultimately, building that revenue. And I have processes in place that tell me this is what I need to do today.
I love it. Amazing. So what if people want to check you out and learn more about all the work that you do? Where can they go and how do they find you?
Yeah, great question. So my name is Marcy Rossi, and that's where I built my website, marcyrossi.com. On there, because I am the master of a checklist, I have a bunch of different, they're not all called checklists, but essentially that's what I'm giving people at the end of the day. But I do have one for your website, right? I have been really into optimizing my website. I built my website myself. And so it's a 30-day checklist, but most of them you can do you could probably do the whole thing in about a week, because some of them are very simple tasks. But if you've been struggling with getting your website to convert or turning those lurkers into leads, this will give you a little step by step. That's marcyrossi.com/website. And I mentioned I'm not on social media. When I pulled away from social media, my business grew 5 times because I decided to dive into what I'm most excited about. But there's a little chat bot in the bottom of my website, and that's me. That's not AI. That's not an assistant. That is me. So if you have questions, like, let me know. I'd love to sit and chat with you.
I love that. Amazing. And yeah, if you guys are listening to the podcast, one thing I'm doing this year is offering a freebie every episode. And so if you also don't want to rely as much on social media and you want to rely more on an email list, I have a free training taking you through how to establish an email list and a freebie that people actually want to get them on your list. And then what do you say afterwards once they're there to grow your discovery call bookings? So if you want to check that out, it's at haleyrowe.com/live event. That's all one word. And thank you so much for being here today on the show. Is there any final words of wisdom you want to share when it comes to systems and where to start for our audience?
Oh gosh, I have so many things I could think of. I think really, if I were going to boil it down, it's just recognizing that these are things that we kind of learn as we do, right? You can't have the checklist first and then do the thing. You have to do the things so that you can create a checklist or a process or a way of operating in your business that makes sense for you. It's that really try and learn it thing. So the biggest thing that I find a lot of business owners struggle with is waiting for the right time, waiting for things to be perfect, waiting. And so I just want to encourage you to go do the thing, and then you can write down what you did afterwards.
I love it. Thank you so much, Marcy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Haley.